Queen's Gambit Declined. The Queen's Gambit Declined, or QGD, is a chess opening in which black declines a pawn offered by white in the Queen's Gambit. 1. d4, d5. 2. c4, s6. This is known as the Orthodox Line of the Queen's Gambit Declined. When the Queen's Gambit Declined is mentioned, it is usually assumed to be referring to the Orthodox Line. See other lines below. The Orthodox Line can be reached by a number of different sessions. 1. d4, ns6-2, c4, s6-3. nf3, d5, 1, d4, s6-2, c4, d5, 1, c4, s6-2. In c3, d5-3, d4, 1. nf3, d5-2, c4, s6-3, d4, and so on. General concepts. Playing 2. s6 releases black's dark squared bishop. By declining white's temporary pawn sacrifice, black erects a solid position. The pawns on d5 and s6 give black a foothold in there. The Queen's Gambit Declined has the reputation of being one of black's most reliable defences to 1, d4. In this situation, white will try to exploit the passivity of black's light squared bishop, and black will try to release it, trade it, or prove that, while passive, the bishop has a useful defensive role. In eventual, dxc4 by black will surrender the centre to white, and black will usually not do this unless he can extract a concession, usually in the form of gaining it by capturing on c4 or only after white has played bd3 first. In the Orthodox Line, the fight for the tempo revolves around white's efforts to play all other useful developing moves prior to playing bd3. Other lines. In its broader sense, the Queen's Gambit Declined is any variation of the Queen's Gambit in which black does not play dxc4. Variations other than the Orthodox Line have their own names and are usually treated separately. 1, d4, d5, 2, c4, s6, and eventual. c6 ms Slav defense 1, d4, d5, 2, c4, c6 Slav defense 1, d4, d5, 2, c4 f of Albion counter Gambit 1, d4, d5, 2, c4 and c6 Chigorin defense 1, d4, d5, 2, c4 bf5 Baltic defense 1, d4, d5, 2, c4, c5 symmetrical defense or Austrian defense 1, d4, d5, 2, c4 nf6 Martial defense. Other 34 games played in the 1927 World Championship between Alexander Alekhine and Jose Raul Capablanca, all except the first and third began with the Queen's Gambit Decline. Black avoids 3. After 1, d4, d5, 2, c4, s6, 3. And c3 other third moves are also possible. 3, cx d5 may be played to lead to the exchange line. 3, nf3 keeps options open. 3, g3 will transpose to the Catalan. And 3, f transposes to the Dime Gambit in a French defense. Black's main move is 3. And f6 though he has other options as well. c5 the tertiary defense if black is willing to accept an. 3. Is 7 the Alathortse variation. At top level, this has recently been played much more often in nf6. Sometimes this transposes to positions arising from 3. nf6 and has the advantage from black's standpoint. nf6 4. 5 bg5 with an annoying pin. In many cases, the game will simply transpose into the main lines after 4 nf3 nf6. 5 bg5 or white can now play 4 cx d5 x5. 5 bf4 c6. 6 f3 when 6. bf5 7. 6 qc2 is also popular. These exchange lines are more popular than transposing at top level. 3. c6, now the semi-Slav defense may be reached via 4 nf3 nf6, therefore f d zephyr. 5 and zephyr bb4 plus. 6 bd2 6, and c3 c5 gives little 6. 7 bxb4 q zephyr plus. 8 bit2 leads to a short struggle and 4 nf3 dxc4 is the noteboom variation, also sometimes known as the Abrahams variation after the English master Gerald Abrahams. The bb4, confusing an Imsundine with a Queen's Gambit, also known as the Berg defense, named for the Latvian player Theodor Berg 1902-1966 who played it against Alexander Alekhine at the Kemri tournament of 1937, and at this point an inaccuracy. Lines that attempt to punish 3. 4 Kaffa plus in c6. 5 nf3 where black is forced to block the c-pawn with the knight, and 4 f3 bxc3 plus 5 bxc3 and white has the bishop pair almost for free and the average worth half a pawn. Since cx d5 is unstoppable and there will be no double pawns as a counterbalance. White also has the option of 4 nf3 nf6 transposing into the Ragozin variation. 3. 6. The Janowski variation gained some interest in 2021 after being tried by world champion Magnus Carlsen. The move threatens dxc4 followed by b5, attempting to hold onto the pawn. For this reason, white usually plays cx-d5 first. Black plays 3. Lines beginning with the moves 1, d4, d5 to c4, s6, in c3 and f6 are covered by ECU codes d35, d69. These are old lines that can transpose into many other queen pawn openings. White has several ways of dealing with black's setup. QGD main variations. 4. bg5 7. 5. and f3 anchor QGD main variations. Tartakower defense or Tartakower Makagonov Bendersky system TMB system 5. h6. 6. 500. 7. f3 b6 is one of the most solid continuations for black. Anti-Tartakower Makagonov Bendevsky anti-TMB 5. h6. 6. bxf6 bxf6. This line was extensively tested in the Kasparov-Karpov matches in 1980s. To this day, black has no problems in this line despite being tested at the highest levels. More recently, Boris Jelfin defended the black side of this variation in the 2011 candidates matches, which eventually he went on to win. For example, in the third round of the final candidate match, he forced white to accept a draw in 14 moves with a very strong novelty, Krishik vs. Gelfand, listed 2011. Lasker defense 5. 0-0. 6. e3 h6. 7. for an effer. 8. bz7 qz7 is also a solid line, often leading to the exchange of two sets of minor pieces. It was this line that Viswanathan Anand chose in the final game of the World Chess Championship 2010 in order to defeat Veselin Topalov and retain a World Championship. Orthodox defense 5. 0-0. 6. e3 mbg7. 7. Ogana c6 and now white has two main moves. 8. bd3 in. 8. qc2. After. 8. bd3 dxe4. 9. bxe4. Black has surrendered the center and stands somewhat cramped, but has succeeded in making white lose a tempo by playing bd3 before bxe4. White will try to use his advantage in space to attack, whereas black will try to keep white at bay while striking back at the center. Capablanca's main idea here was the freeing maneuver 9. 10. bz7 qz7 11.00 and xc3 12. Or xc3 f13 dzf nzf 14. nzf qzf 15, f4 k7, which has led to a number of exchanges in the center, though black must exercise care even in the wake of this simplification. This line was once so frequently played that it has a separate code d69 in ECO, though the lack of active counterplay for black has made the main line of the orthodox a backwater in modern practice. Cambridge Springs defense 4. bg5 mbd7 anchor Cambridge Springs defense. The Cambridge Springs defense was introduced more than a century ago and is still played. 1. d4 d5 to c4 s6. 3. and c3 and f6. 4. bg5 mbd7 setting up the elephant trap. 5. f3 c6. 6. and f3 k5, now black intends, bb4 in possibly, nefer with pressure along the Vivian diagonal. This black defense is popular among amateurs because there are several traps white can fall into, for example. 7. and d2, one of the main lines countering black's pressure along the diagonal 7. bb4. 8. qc2 0-0 and here. 9. bd3 loses since 9. dxc4 threatening. 10. bxf6 cxd3. Iswishinsug. 11. qxd3 and xf6 wins a piece for black. Exchange variation 4. cxd5 x5 anchor exchange variation. 1. d4 d5 to c4 s6. 3. nc3 and s6. 4. cxd5 x5. 5. bg5 c6. 6. qc2 and white has a pawn majority in the center. Black has a pawn majority on the. This pawn structure gives white the opportunity to either advance his pawns in the center by means of Ngetwo f2 f3 followed by Etwo f4, or play for by means of the plan or bone followed by b2 b4 b5, then bxc6 in order to create a weak pawn at c6. While black can play cx b5 or recapture on c6 with a piece, each of these possibilities is even less desirable than the backward pawn in the open file. For black, exchanging a d5 has released his light-squared bishop and opened the e-file, giving him the use of f4 as a springboard for central and play. While chances are balanced, black is usually more or less forced to use his superior activity to launch a piece attack on white's king, as the long-term chances in the QGD exchange structure favor white. The following games are model games for white's central pawn advance: Carlsen vs. Jakovenko, Nanjing 2009 Minority Attack, Evans vs. Opsal, Dubrovnik 1915. Black could also play 5. c6. qc4 transposes into a line in a classical variation of the Nimzo Indian defense. 3 knights variation 4. In f3 anchor 3 knights variation. The 3 knights variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined is usually reached from the move order 1 d4 nf6 to c4 s6. 3 in f3 d5. 4 nc3, played to avoid the Nimzo Indian defense from the white point of view and the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined from the black point of view. Black has a few options in response to the 3 knights variation. Vienna variation 4. The Vienna variation occurs after black plays 4. The main line of the Vienna continues as 5 f before 6. bg5. White's pawns or pieces occupy the central squares in exchange for long-term pawn structure weaknesses. An instance of Vienna variation played at the highest level was Fine U, Avra 1938. Quiet variation of the Vienna variation occurs after 5 f3. Semi-terrace defense 4. Semi-terrace defense occurs after black plays 4. An important line in this variation is the endgame line where the game continues 5 cxd5 cxd4 6 qxd4 x 7 f dz 8 qx8 plus kx8 where the queens get traded off in a similar fashion to the endgame in the Berlin defense, resulting in a drawish position. This line has been played by top grandmasters such as Wesley So, Anish Giri, and Magnus Carlsen, aiming for a draw. There is also the exchange variation where the game continues 5 cxd5 nxd5 6 fr nxe3 7 bxe3 cxd4 8 cxd4, which has been used played by the likes of Ding Lion, Anish Giri, Vladimir Kramnik, and Magnus Carlsen. Ragozin variation 4. The Ragozin variation ECO code D37 D39 occurs after black plays 4. The Lekang variation of the Ragozin variation occurs with 5 Kafra nc66 f300 7 qseat wo. A transposition into the Vienna variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined occurs with 5 bg5 dxc4 6 theffer. An alternate line commonly played is 5 cxd5 x5 6 bg5 h6 7 for to avoid transposing into the Vienna. Semi-Slav defense 4. The semi-Slav defense occurs after black plays 4. Transposition into main variations 4. bg5. A transposition into the main variations of the Queen's Gambit Declined occurs after black plays 4. bg5 and the 3 knights variation. How it attack 4. bf4. This variation is also a popular line. Placing the bishop on bg5 allows black to exchange more freely with moves like ns6 fr, as seen in the Lascaux defense. The move bf4 is designed to restrict black's opportunities in this way, as well as reducing opportunities to gain the bishop pair. They usually continues with 5 6 f3c5 7 dxc5 bxc5. Peter Liko, usually an F player, used this variation as white to beat Vladimir Kramnik in their 2004 World Championship match.